Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! And video game news. I'm just gonna start calling it Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Save myself a couple of breaths there. The festival ended, so we're getting a less than a megabyte update here to end the festival, which arguably that should be done kind of in the back end, particularly when you know for a fact that there's loading happening every time you come to the main screen anyways. Apparently there's some new gates uh, added to solo mode, and then a new drop set, so we should just buy a bunch of those. And apparently there's been some matching errors. Error occurs when playing ranked after solo player and watching match history. What the actual error is, I don't know. They're not getting into that kind of level of detail. But yeah, you know, every time you come to this main menu, it connects to the server. So it would make so much sense to have updates be server side or downloaded at that point instead of at the start. It's a logical flaw more than a programming flaw. It's just to when should this actually happen. Um, but there might be an argument as to why it happens at the beginning, because maybe there is some offline mode in which you can actually play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, or at least ambitions for an offline mode where you could play Master Duel. Um, so we have another Spectate Live. I'm going to clear off Spectate Lives on days I don't stream, just to make sure I get more of those. And we can see here we have one more day, and I missed like 3 days of logging in. So I'm not doing the greatest of jobs. So let's see what this new gate looks like. We won't click into it. It's way down here, Legend of the Star Heroes. If anything, it feels like it might be a sequel to something that already had happened as far as these solo mode story things. I doubt it's any better than what we've seen before. That these solo modes tend to be pretty boring. Okay. And then, is this a new selection pack? Let's see. Well, if it is, I already have far too many cards here to justify opening this selection pack again. Like, it would be really crazy just trying to get like a couple of ultra rares and a couple of super rares. But honestly, I think it's more a case of this being the thing that's going to rotate out. And there is a better argument to making this, but not a good argument to opening that. Unless it's over here. Oh, yeah, it's way over here. Okay. So you have a bundle deal where you get this, and if anything, this makes me wonder if this number is going up, but it doesn't seem like this number is going up still. 6,950 has been the number as far as Master Duel cards in total. Alright, we can purchase that very easily though, and that's not a very good bundle by any means. Not a very good draw. But buying 10 Master Duel packs and getting one guaranteed card is better than buying 10 Master packs. And honestly, until we hit a point where we would have gotten most of everything else, I don't know if there's ever really a good reason to buy Master packs. It just always feels like there's going to be better offers in selection packs, or higher drop rates of ultra rares or super rares in selection packs, or you're obviously going to have better offerings in secret packs. or at least you're going to have a high chance of better offerings in secret packs. The whole system is fairly confused intentionally, so it's really not comparing apples to apples, but it is somewhat fairly obvious that there's not a good reason to ever buy master packs. Like, at some point I imagine master packs will be the default that are heavily de-emphasized, and we'll start to see actual expansion packs that are going to be like selection packs, but they're going to be, these are the new cards, because there are 10,000 cards in total in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, and there's only about 7,000 cards in Master Duel, so one expansion should add at least 100 new cards. And 100 new cards that are specifically useful. And so I'm going to get like 2 ultra rares here, but that draw is pretty bad. Double keys for secret packs there. Interesting. We found a new pack, and we've gotten Forbidden Droplet, which arguably maybe Forbidden Droplet's a really good card. It probably is. Alright. You can't purchase that a second time, so that's as good as it's gonna get. And as far as accessories, I think we own everything. And as far as structured decks, we've owned all of this. These structured decks now have art behind them. That's new. Slight tweak, and probably for the better. Alright, so then we've got enough gold here. Let's see. As far as featured cards, number owned, let's open a pack here of this, since that's a good option, and since we have enough to justify that. I'm starting late to this evening on this Friday, which I'm just inherently getting very late as far as streaming. Maybe next week will be better. I did, for the accountability section, finish Wolfenstein the Old Blood. There is really just no game there worth playing. Like, I don't know what else to say there. The nightmare sections where you get to play the levels of some of the Wolfenstein 3D levels with the new engine and the remake engine, it kind of ends. Like, you don't get all the way to Mecha Hitler. You aren't playing all of the levels. You're playing a selection of the levels. And then oddly, like, what indicated where you could go to sleep to play these secret levels, there were posters of Wolfenstein 3D on the wall, and the last one has a tear in the edge, and what happens is, because there's a tear in the edge, is that you walk out of the you walk out into a room and you stop seeing the old visuals and 3D visuals from the original Wolfenstein 3D, and you just see a real world open vista, open valley world, and then you, I don't even think, actually get to walk towards the edge of entering the real world before you wake up again. One thing about Wolfenstein Old Blood 2 is that you start seeing zombies late in the game after you get hit in the head, and then you get hit in the head at the end, and it really does just leave this question as to whether you were hallucinating the zombies the whole time there. And it sets itself up in such a way that it could be a prequel to Wolfenstein The New Order, but it's a prequel not worth playing. The only thing Wolfenstein The Old Blood really succeeded at is making me like Wolfenstein: The New Order a lot more retroactively, just in my fuzzy memory of Wolfenstein: The New Order. I definitely am a lot happier with it now, because Wolfenstein: The Old Blood was so bad. And see, this really isn't, at this point, a great deck to buy another 10 cards with. At least not to start with. So, I think that moved that around. So let's go through these and make sure we're picking decks that we have very little from, because that's the right way to play. Of course, the danger here is I could get a pack of 10 and not get an ultra rare at all, and then I'd have to buy another pack of 10. The other danger certainly would be that there would be a new expansion, and in that new expansion I wouldn't have enough gems saved up for that new expansion. These selection packs aren't particularly good either as their offerings, because unlike Master Duel packs, which are just giving you 8 cards out of a very large pool, the selection packs are giving you 4 cards out of that same very large pool, and then 4 cards out of a much smaller selection pool. So you definitely always want to see new as much as possible, if you're just trying to get as many cards as possible, which is what you're supposed to be trying to go for in a collectible card game. Of course, when you think about it in the real world of collectible card games, that's not really what you're trying to do. Nobody was in the real world playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And trying to have a complete collection of cards. 10,000 cards is ridiculous. You would have to, at most I'd imagine you could get 250 cards in a binder. So you're talking like 4 binders for 1,000 times 10 would be 40 binders. You're talking a very thick bookshelf worth of cards, with many of those cards being extremely valuable and extremely expensive, or maybe expensive is the better phrase than valuable. So people playing in the real world, they kind of know the cards they want, and they're trading and buying for those cards and those cards at best. And what that leaves is most collectible card players have maybe 3 or 4 mainstay decks that they're playing. It's too hard to even remember more than that. Personally, with my memory, it's not good at all. So even in the digital form, I'm playing 1 mainstay deck, and that's about it. Every other pre-built deck is just sitting in the saved file and being unused. And of course, we're unlocking more as we go along here, so yep. So yeah, that does create problems. This one might be worth considering. We're going to start to get down to the point also where we start to see collections that have half of the cards, or we have half of 1 copy of the cards, and we're looking for like 2 or 3 copies of cards. And inevitably, I'll probably want to keep at least 1,000, probably 2,000 or 3,000 gems. So I don't want to just exhaust my entire collection going down all of these secret packs. But it also doesn't really hurt to try and get more cards, even if you're not really going to use them. I haven't done any research on it, but I suspect we still don't have any kind of assistive software that would let you log in your account to a website and look at the cards you have and tell you what's the best deck you could build with the cards you have. That is something that really should be built into any collectible card game, instead of being like third-party services that work for Hearthstone, and maybe Magic the Gathering got something like that at some point. So not being able to be told what's the best deck or what is a top tier meta deck you can build with the cards you have, then you are limited into just trying to build a top tier meta deck from a script and a recipe. Well, I guess recipe is a better term there. And that's what I've already done, so unless the meta game changes from the meta deck that I'm already playing, I should just keep on playing the meta deck that I'm playing. Arguably, maybe I could try and make some slight tweaks to the meta deck I'm playing. But that would be it. Just slight tweaks based on potentially having some cards I didn't have when I originally created that deck. And that is why it is so incredibly important, and Yu-Gi-Oh! So far is so much dropping the ball as far as adding new cards, because as soon as they add that next expansion, that's when the top tier meta deck should change. We are starting to run out of gems, and the odds are not particularly great that all of these are going to be that way. Destiny Sorcerers is one to consider. It's in the middle there. This one. It's also one to consider. So those two are worth considering. More and more it is going to be like that, though, where you're going to have a few cards, maybe not enough to negate a deck. That one's out. So we're thinking, well, this one, and this one. We could do that if none of the others catch on, but that would be the last of our gems. That one's not a good one to consider. Of course, opening 3 more things would also almost certainly give us more secret packs to something. And we're not finding anything where the cards are just completely not collected. Alright. So we take the risky path, we get this one, and this one once, and hope everything works. And hope that none of this leads to needing to buy a second tin pack or needing to buy anything else because of secret keys unlocking. Now, right now, we're in danger of not getting an ultra rare. For the accountability sections, instead, on top of playing a couple hours of Wolfenstein: The Old Blood and just being done with that, I'm working on wrapping up projects. I've got a couple of really old cell phones that I'm gonna try and turn into media players to give away for little kids. I've done that before, but I didn't keep a backup of it, and what I did before was slightly newer phones, so the software is slightly different. But yeah, there's a couple of Raspberry Pis. If anything, I found that I had another Raspberry Pi 3B Plus sitting around, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize I had that, because I put it in a different place, which that's always the danger of trying to organize things, is that you end up creating two different places where you organize things. So with this chip shortage, even though I've been desperately hoping to get a Model 4B, I don't think there is a 4B Plus, but maybe there is. Whichever is available. I've been trying to get those, but they're precious stock. They're starting to come back in stock in stores, but getting them actually delivered to you still seems to be close to impossible. Although it kind of doesn't matter now when setting up the software. Like I can set it up to run on the 3B Plus, and then you can just take the operating system out, the SD card out, and put it in the new one. We got one ultra rare. That was the one thing we needed. Now we have a decent percentage of these cards. So we now have a couple new cards to consider, and I think the order of these have moved around. So yeah, that's an issue. They seems to like to move these packs around. This one wouldn't be a terrible one to consider. That one would be a terrible one to consider. But yeah, I apparently lucked out more than I thought. Let's get this. And have two Raspberry Pi 3B Pluses, so I can just use those to make some Raspberry Pi holes for ad blocking and some other features. I'm gonna try and set up WireGuard so that you have a VPN back into your own house using WireGuard. And then I have a couple of Raspberry Pi Zeros, is what the small ones are called. I couldn't remember the name. Which I really don't even have much use for, because those are actually particularly underpowered, and it arguably might become so difficult to get a Raspberry Pi Zero instead of a Zero 2, or a Raspberry Pi Zero W instead of a 2W, Zero 2W, or whatever it's called. It might be so expensive to get those that I might be better off eventually changing what that project is going to do to the Raspberry Pi Pico Zero, Pico W, which maybe that would work, maybe it wouldn't. It probably wouldn't, because what I'm trying to do is have it set up to be its own access point, and if I get a really ambitious USB thumbstick to hold data for the access point, and also boot up immediately to a web page via the micro HDMI video output, which I've never even had anything that's worked with micro HDMI, so I had to order an adapter just to connect the video card, the video output, micro HDMI to HDMI. But yeah, it's basically a digital signage project that I'm working on, trying to combine 3 or 4 different features and softwares, and hope that I can get them all to work well enough to each other. And see, this is the problem. We didn't get an ultra rare that time, and so with that, this will be our last purchase. This will get this 10 pack with a guaranteed ultra rare and some extra ultra rares, and then that's as good as we can go, and that's used up all of our crystals. So if next week, 2 weeks from now, a new expansion comes out with no as a surprise, then we would be really out of luck. Of course, the problem here is I'm trying to wrap up projects that have been kind of backburnered, or abandoned projects that have been backburnered. Is the part shortage is not giving any new items or any new ideas for projects. Since there's no hardware, there aren't a lot of new ideas for software. So I am finishing things effectively just to be bored and sit around and do nothing. Which I still have a lot of backburnered stuff to do, certainly, but it is, I am potentially painting myself into the corner to just abandon a lot of that maker mentality that I had been embracing in the past couple of years, which is fine. I can just play more games, and I still have plenty of Lego to do, and still haven't really organized my Lego display. I need to work on that more. The physical aspects of moving things around in the middle of the summer is really just a no-go. And from that perspective, I should probably plan in the future for that to be the case, where if it is in the middle of the summer, if it's hot outside, just don't plan on doing a lot of physical activity, even though I have gotten quite a lot of physical activities things done recently. I definitely suffered for it, though. Even trying to work in the middle of the night, it's still hot and exhausting, and I'm just not that used to doing physical activity by any means. Sitting around way too much on computers playing video games. But yeah, it's better to finish things, finish projects, than to just have them sit. Plus, I also have the Nintendo Switch, so if I really start to get bored, I can focus more on playing the Nintendo Switch, which I should do that to a certain level anyways. So we now have a decent amount. I also wanted to get these cards specifically, so I could try and figure out if maybe these would be useful for something. Because they look like potentially interesting extra cards. But we are totally out of gems at this point, so while this would have been a great deck to open another 10 pack on, we don't have enough gems to make that jump, because the danger is you'd spend 1,000, you wouldn't get any ultra rares, and then you wouldn't have another 1,000 to spend. here's another deck that looks like it's got some interesting cards, although we have quite a lot of those already. And this once again really just highlights the problem with the secret decks and the time limit on the secret decks. That's something I really wish they would just fix. Just make the time limit at least a lot longer, if not get rid of them completely. This looks like a lot of interesting lava based cards. Or lava themed cards. This artificial pressure that they're trying to put on you to buy packs, to buy gems, is cruel, and it is very cruel without much of a purpose. This would also have been a really good deck to open, I think. Although, arguably, a lot of these, like ultra rare cards, may only really synergize with the other cards in the selection deck. So, if you don't have all of them in your deck, they won't really work. And we still have plenty of legacy packs too. The issue also, see, this is my mainstay deck, and I don't see any reason why I would want to buy this or change this at the moment without knowing exactly what cards I was going to swap out. Like something like this ultra rare being swapped out, or maybe card draws being swapped out, or this being swapped out. I think what I would want to get rid of is these, because this one synergizes with this one, and if I could get rid of these cards for something better, I would, because these I don't think work at all, and they may not have even originally been in the deck at all. Because, yeah, I have no idea why these exist. Otherwise, I would just add like one of these. See if I had one of these extra. That would probably be better. Or if I could add one of these extra, that would be better. Maybe. Yeah, it does definitely come off like of the cards you really would want to add. I don't have many of these. Getting rid of this one also might be something. Could have one more of those. Make a slight change there. And this Forbidden Droplet as a card, I already had one, so I could have a second one. There. Which would let me get rid of that. But I pretty much have not enough for a third one of those, where I really would like a third one of those. And all of those are ultra rare, so crafting one, I mean, I guess I could generate one for 30 crafting points. It's not really that much crafting points. And then get rid of, say, some of these mid-tier cards. That get rid of this, for instance. I don't think I ever use that. There we go. And immediately doing that, of course, unlocks the secret pack. And then I guess the next question would be 30 ultra rare points for another one of these. If we were to do that and that would be 60 ultra rare points to get rid of this. Which this is also an ultra rare, and this is also an ultra rare. So it probably would make more sense to do one of these and one of these and then that and that. And I hope these are improvements I'm making. That's the real hope here. That's not even the reason I came in here. The reason I came in here is I wanted to scroll down to the point where we start to see cards after opening all these packs, which is about here. So we can see that this percentage, which is approaching 50%, I'd say 50% is about there. So I'm saying we are probably at 30%. 35% even of all cards we've gotten at least one copy of. So those numbers are not bad by any means. Then if we come over here and dismantle all extra cards, we have a bunch of extra normals and a bunch of extra rares. But no extra super rares or ultra rares. And it would be probably the easiest. Probably should have made a backup here. It would probably be easiest if we were to create a new deck and then do a filter here for field spells, this, 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 and this, and then this, 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 this. You know what? Let's start over again. Let's do just these with a rarity level of normal and rare. Right. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You're really not going to get very far with this though, because best case scenario, you go through this effort and you take each one of this collection up to 30, and that's, I mean, I guess there's actually no official limit, and you don't have to be particularly precise because you can certainly just grab a bunch as long as you're just not getting duplicates. That's the one thing you would want to just be careful about, is not accidentally having two of anything. So what would this process really look like? And I really am wasting a lot of extra time here, doing some experimenting here. It does kind of just feel like you could go and build as big of a deck as you want. That being said, it doesn't seem like you can draw a bounding box around. I feel like the game might potentially crash. You can't just draw a bounding box around cards and grab a bunch of them. So, no more cards. 65 apparently is the hard limit there. And then, if I was to say, we need things that could be in the extra deck. Is there a way specifically to have something that would show up in the extras deck filtered into this? No, doesn't seem like there is. So best case scenario, you would have to scroll through this. And find those specific cards. And even in doing that, we know that the limitation on extras cards are going to be 15. So you're not going to get that far with this. Although there may not really be as many extra cards. Arguably, you probably would want to get the normal effect monster cards first anyways, instead of focusing in on that. Interesting that the extras deck is allowing me to add more. Alright, so an extra deck of 20. I didn't realize you could have 20. Okay. So then, batch generate all the cards that you own. Cannot generate cards with rarities you do not have. The cost here for normals would be too high, and the cost here for rares would be too low. So let's drop all of that. Actually, looking at the cost, you probably want to drop all the extra cards anyways, because these extra cards are going to have such specific summoning variations and costs, or specific ways in which they're summoned. But 65 cards there. Let's see what that would do. We could do that, and we could do that. Did we get any foils at all in crafting any of those? Yes, we got a glossy finish for Doom Donuts, but that seems to be, of the 65 cards we just got, the only one, which those odds seem pretty low. And then that was a lot of effort. What I would want to do here to try and balance that out, though, would be come out here, discard changes in turn, because we don't want to save that deck. Create a new save deck. Come over here and start again with these kinds of cards. And this time, only rarity. And then just random sampling of cards. Just try very hard to not end up with the same cards. Some of these rare cards are somewhat recognizable to me. Doesn't it make more sense, though, if you want to show that fancy card pack opening animation, to be able to simply make a rare Master Duel card pack of 8 cards with rarity of rare or better, give or guaranteed rarity of rare only, and then you could just craft a pack or purchase a pack like that with the crafting points, at least as an option. Perhaps that ruins the strategy and the gimmicks that they're playing with to manipulate people into buying other kinds of packs, but this current system of just random of having to build a deck of a random 65 cards to then batch generate is not a good system. And once you have one of these with the filter the way I have it filtered, the ones that are crafted will go away and the ones that aren't crafted will go back to the top. So that works fairly well. But that's too many. So we'll then have to come back this way. The actual cost to craft things is actually fairly low, so the fact that I have 3,000 crafting points really just highlights that I haven't been doing anything with it. There we go. Did we get any foil versions of cards that way? Alright. And that puts us in an interesting spot. We could potentially try to get another 40 probably of both normals and rares. But yeah, you can definitely see why I haven't been spending a lot of time trying to craft cards. At the end of the day, that didn't actually change anything as far as what cards I have that I want to play versus cards that I have just in general increasing. Alright, well, we need to do some daily quests. I need to do some solo play. I'd like to not fall out of platinum. I made changes to my deck, so hopefully that's for the better. And I desperately need to get through all the video game news and wrap up fairly quickly today, and doing all of this extra stuff is not going to work in that direction. I need to decide whether I'm going to try and play Soma over the weekend. I need to probably schedule videos first and then decide if I need more Halloween footage, which I very possibly do. I just saw that episode like 53 of Fallout 3 aired on my channel, and I'm like, wow, I have forgotten or not been paying attention that we're already up to episode 53. There's been 52 other episodes. I knew it was airing, but I felt like I was closer to episode 4 or 5, not 53. There you go, quick victory there. I will take that and appreciate that. Then hop into the next game. As far as what video game news is happening, I don't really think too much. I haven't caught anything happening. There is a certain level of disconnect I feel like I'm having at the moment as far as video game news, because Giant Bomb is really not filling that need anymore, and I'm not really listening to Giant Bomb that much. Plus there's it's either a case where I'm already hearing the video game news, so so when I hear it from something like Giant Bomb, it's already too late, or there's just not that much video game news happening in general. Right, what is this card going? Alright, let's negate the negation. The negation didn't negate the negation. Interesting. Why? During either player's turn, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard this turn. Each turn your opponent special summons a monster, immediately draw one card. You can only use one Max C per turn. That is not what Max C used to do. And I kind of knew that Max C had been changed in the trading card game, but they are suspiciously changing it in the game without making it obvious that they've changed it in the game. I would not have generated another Max C if that was the case. It definitely reads now like how it's played in the Western Yu-Gi-Oh! Compared to the Eastern Yu-Gi-Oh! Alright, let's go through the news as quickly as possible, I imagine. Tower of Fantasy's global release date has been confirmed, according to Video Games Chronicles. I think we'd already talked about that. Yeah, we'd already talked about that. Steam now offers, officially supports the Switch's retro controllers. So now the NES, Super NES, Nintendo 64, and Mega Drive controllers are now work on Valve's PC service, which definitely makes them slightly more useful as hardware devices, and definitely is a shot across the bow as far as PC gaming and emulation, and Valve embracing emulators and emulation a little bit more, because you know for a fact that these controllers are going to be used 99 times out of 100 to run RetroArch on Steam and play ROMs. There are going to be very few, very close to zero games that are going to say, hey, you can play this game using the Nintendo 64 or NES or Super NES controllers. Uh, it does give some longer longevity to those controllers, which almost certainly are not going to have a lot of support when a Switch 2 comes out, or any extra support when a Switch 2 comes out. The only thing you could possibly hope from this, and it is a pie in the sky hope certainly, is that with the support being added here, that is because Nintendo is in talks with Valve to port more of their old games to PC and Steam, which that would be crazy but really cool too if all of a sudden Nintendo said we don't really care that much about having exclusives to sell Switch 2, the Switch 2 or the Switches. So let's just start putting all of our old lineup and our online lineup on Steam. I could see Nintendo thinking about doing that, but being Nintendo, they almost certainly would want so much control that Valve wouldn't give them if they were to try to take their online ROM offerings and put them on Steam instead, or even try to integrate Steam, some form of Steam, into the Switch. But yeah, this definitely feels like more of an embracing of emulation than it does some embracing of Nintendo. The real question would be the Joy-Cons being supported, the Switch as an input being supported, and that would be a lot more difficult. Meanwhile, there's not a lot of games that are better being played with a controller. Like, even the Super NES controller, which would be the one I would say is your best bet, is not better than playing with just an Xbox controller or PlayStation controller. You have all those same buttons and that feel in your hand still. The Nintendo 64 controller obviously is pretty much mandatory for playing a Nintendo 64 game, or you have to really work around it otherwise, but that's pretty much only if you're going to play NES games, Nintendo 64 games. And I don't have any love for the Mega Drive controller, and I don't have any love for any of the other controllers. Okay. It'll be interesting to see if there's any new news around those announcements, but I could also see it being something that just happens and Nintendo just doesn't put any comment on it. That would be Nintendo's smart response anyways, is to not have the Streisand effect and point more people towards the fact that RetroArch is on Steam and that now Steam supports controllers. Steam in general, I think, is fairly happy to I think they are fairly happy to support any controller they can support. And when you think about the idea of the Steam Deck, then you have another direction and option as far as how the Steam Deck running emulators could control, or you could potentially have a kickstand on a Steam Deck case, which they do have a Steam Deck case that is out now that has a kickstand. I saw it on Linus Tech Tips, which I'm probably watching more of that than I should these days. But yeah, you could put the Steam Deck on a kickstand now and use a wireless controller to play old games. Arguably though, while the Steam Deck is destroying all the cheap Chinese Switch clones, it's still kind of a weak uh, gaming platform outside of emulating, and it's still too expensive to really buy if you're just going to be emulating. Like, I do have some emulation RetroPie type project I want to work on at some point in the future, but at the current moment I don't really know how I would set that up, whether I'd really try to wait for a Raspberry Pi 5 that hasn't come out yet, or whether I'd just try to set it up to an actual PC and have more support that way. I'm gonna lose here. Moving on, Diablo Immortal Mobile tops 100 million in player spending in 8 weeks, which we've already kind of talked about that. It's kind of sad news for the gaming community to really show itself as being that manipulatable, but sadly they do seem to be that manipulatable. It still benefits me to activate traps and spells until we get to lifetime achievements of those done, which until we get pretty much all the lifetime achievements done, it benefits me to continue to activate things. But yeah, I wish people would say no to things like Diablo Immortal with its large amounts of microtransactions. There is also an expectation that the microtransaction income will swell quite a bit when it launches in China, assuming it does launch in China. I can't remember now whether it was Diablo Immortal that had the Weibo insulting the Chinese presidents and then it being delayed or reconsidered as far as getting approval. Yeah, I think it was Diablo Immortal, but I could be wrong. So, yeah. I think there is a possibility I misunderstand how many Chinese people actually have any kind of cell phone, unlimited data plans, or internet access in their apartments or houses. And there may very well be a case where very few people could access the internet, or the internet was just getting shut down or overwhelmed in apartments and houses in China during the lockdowns. So you would think that if they all had internet, they could be spending a lot of time playing games, probably not willing to spend a lot of money in the middle of a lockdown when they're not working, but it is very possible that none of them really have internet and that they were going to gaming centers and LAN PC cafe type places to play, because we definitely know there was a lot of those, or at least there used to be a lot of those. I haven't heard stories about the PC cafes in a while, and it certainly would fall into the communist idea that you should be a good little worker and not have too much gaming going on in your house, and you should just sleep at your house and then come back to work. Let's see, moving on, Bungie says it's reduced the communication with players due to, quote, real threats towards staff or taking them seriously, the studio explains. Immediately when you hear something like this, I have to tinfoil hat it and go, what were these real threats? Let's if it's a legal matter, certainly I could understand some of this being in shadow and not really talked about, but too often it feels like they claim there are real threats when there really aren't real threats. Negate the effects of all spells, it says. Okay, well. I guess that means I can potentially destroy. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters. Well, they're face-up on the field, but their effects still can be activated. Okay, well. It doesn't stop me from activating these. It just stops me from acting on these, which arguably I would want arguably I'd want a whole another set of these 4 characters in my deck. And that would, in the extra deck, that would work fairly nicely. I don't know why I'm bothering to put this specifically in the attack position. That was dumb. Yeah. Says, quote, "We're taking him seriously. Let's get down in here." In reaction to a Reddit post noting Bungie was responding to users far less frequently, one user replied that was happening when developers receive harassment and death threats over a video game. When another user suggested that the focus on the rude minority was a deliberate PR-driven attempt to reduce communication without backlash, the community manager claimed the situation has gone beyond merely rude remarks and had escalated the threats. Now, I'm fully willing to believe that there is a handful, dozens, maybe even 100 or 2 crazy people out there that are making, like 10-year-olds, probably a lot of them, making death threats and not realizing the illegality of that or the wrongness of that. But honestly, I do lean way more to believing that this is just an attempt to them to stop responding, because that's not the right response. Let's just boil it down. Some bad actors are making threats, therefore we're going to stop talking to the good people that aren't making threats. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's the kind of nonsense, BS, political doublespeak you see so far too often in politics around the world. And once they make this claim, they have to double down on it. Otherwise, they admit that they're just being ridiculous SJW type overactors. Let's not even use SJW in this case, because it's not. We shouldn't just put everything on SJW concepts. That they can. Let's just say they're overreacting. They say there have been real threats towards the people in our studio, which this is where real journalism needs to come in, and they say, can you show us, the news reporter, these real threats so that us as Video Games Chronicles can independently verify that the threats are real and that they're completely unacceptable. And this is where video game journalism is not real journalism, because there isn't even a thought for a second on doing that. Okay. Let's play before we go further. Do that. And then do that. Nope, I needed to destroy this. Arg. We could potentially win here, but I needed to have destroyed this card first. And even at that, that probably wouldn't have worked. So I needed to have destroyed that so that the spell itself might have worked. And yeah, that probably wouldn't have worked in the first place. See, they added, we're taking them seriously, which led to an amount of reduced communications as the team plans future protection strategies to help avoid these certain things. I will be very clear in saying that I appreciate the studio and the amount they've helped me personally. After some serious harassments towards me and my family, I'm taking time off in part because of this. Just because I can't see it, you can't see it directly in a given tweet or forum reply doesn't mean it didn't happen, which, okay, show us pics or it didn't happen is the standard in news reporting. Knowing that this had an impact on decent players who are now lacking the ability to communicate with developers. None of this is meant to be a punishment to the people who can leave clear and respectful feedback. Respectful is always going to be thrown out also as, oh, it's not respectful, which you really should never use the phrase respect. I've gone on this rant before, but what one person considers respect is completely different from the next person. It is, respect is just this boogie word in the minds of people. It has no meaning and it is frankly inflammatory. They go, there are no instances at Bungie where people are actively looking at a conversation and plan retaliatory actions towards the player base via hotfixes, updates, or comm strategies. Sometimes we just need to take some time to get things straightened out. Which you really shouldn't have to say, we don't plan on punishing people, because that really puts them in a mindset where they're like saying, oh yeah, we definitely discussed punishing people. We definitely were thinking about punishing people. Like the fact that that's even said is scary, to say the least. Alright, well, traps I think still work, so we'll and see, you seem to feel the need to negate that, which possibly meant that that would have worked, or maybe he just doesn't care. Like, ironically, he is lowering his health quicker than he's lowering mine. But yeah, this really is just a case where either their systems were so bad that you were able to directly find these people and find their names, look up their addresses, as far as communicating with people. Or this is just all as close to a false flag operation as you could possibly get, while still admitting that there probably were some small number of people making threats. Honestly, I would not be surprised if it's literally one person making threats, and that has caused them to actively abandon any level of communication. Because certainly if it was just customer service representatives, any good customer service system is going to have, I can't believe I actually won there, any good customer service thing is going to have employees using fake names, and it's just going to be, my name is Michael, not the last name. As far as like the developers and CEOs and stuff, their names have to be public, but they all should be at a certain level protected with PO boxes and things like that. And honestly, looking up people's address and trying to SWAT them is a problem for the police, not understanding swatting and responding incorrectly. And it's a problem with the phone system in particular. It would be fairly easy to simply treat any calls that might lead to the SWAT showing up differently based on whether or not you can track the phone that's making the call or not. Because every single one of those swatting instances tends to be triggered by somebody making a phone call outside of the house, outside of the area that they claim to be in. It's, I think, a lot harder than that. I think it's hard, if not impossible, to actively spoof the location and the phone number of the person actually in the house. So, arguably, I think it is fair for, if you're calling 911, for your location to be sent directly to the police immediately, and for them to say, wait a minute, this phone call is coming from a different state, or it's coming from a different house. Let's not treat this as in the same way. I kind of hate to always have to be against developers, but I feel like this really is an overreaction. Even if it's 100% true that a lot of threats are being made, it's still an overreaction, and it really does just feel like I really have to lean towards the cynical people and lean in with the cynical people saying, you know what, Bungie is just being trying to find a way to get out of doing as much communication, because Bungie has not been doing the best job with Destiny. Yeah, I think other people are also suffering with this Max C change, so I need to swap over real quick and change out the Max C's to a different card. Alright. We want to move as fast as possible. And I'm hoping that there's nothing special about this card that stops me from just destroying it here. Okay. And we'll just have to end the turn there. Moving on with the next story, because I ranted too much there. The PlayStation 5's latest system update beta adds 1440p support in folders. Players can now organize their games in the game lists, which, it's crazy how you have these new walled garden experiences, and they don't even have default functions and options that should have been there on day one, like folders. Like, it definitely feels like it's a case where people are just not learning from the past when it comes to some of these walled garden operating systems. Their features are still missing. And if anything, I imagine that is an example of just how unlistened to computer developers are compared to the management, middle management, as far as just a case of completely ignoring what a developer says needs to happen. I was hoping I was going to be able to activate that a second time. Because definitely developers on day one would have said, hey, we should probably have folders. That should be a feature. And almost certainly some middle manager developer said, let's put that on the 2.0 version plan or the 3.0 version plan and not add it on, not bother to program it day one. Let's instead do flasher features or just make sure the actual thing works. Moving on, Sega's Hardlight Studios working on a new Sonic mobile game. A new job listing reveals the UK studio's latest project. Yay, another Sonic game. Boo, another Sonic game. Like, one of these Sonic games has to be good before anybody should be happy or interested in yet another Sonic game. Just because a Sonic movie somehow magically was successful, arguably because it was out of the hands of Sega, doesn't mean Sonic is back or Sonic is the new poster child of video games. Alright. See if we can pull this off. There's really not a good reason why this would work. Unless he's just not willing to discard a card. Because, yeah, he's just gonna synergize that. Discard another card. It seems like I could activate this. But activating it, I don't think is going to benefit me any. So I've just lost. Wave 2 of Mario Kart's 8 Deluxe DLC tracks come out next week, according to Video Games Chronicles. August free games with Amazon Prime Gaming have been announced. I should keep an eye out to see if Video Games Chronicles uses the quote free concept when talking about other services. Because they're not wrong by any means. It is not really a free game. You have to pay for Amazon Prime to get them. But I also should keep an eye out to see if they use that same concept. What's interesting here is the games that are being offered here is StarCraft Remastering, Zack McCracken and Alien Mindbenders, which is a really old game, Beast of Marvella Island, Recompile, Scourgebringer, and Family Mysteries, Poisonous Promise. For Battle.net, I think I probably will spend the extra time to claim StarCraft Remastered. There is definitely a chance that anything you own on Battle.net may at some point move over to Steam. And at that point, I'd really be willing to cover it. In fact, I might even be willing to consider... I really need to redo my deck and get rid of Maxi now that it's useless. I should potentially reconsider the playing StarCraft Remastered, even if it is just a Battle.net game at the moment. Moving on, the Epic Games Store has announced its next free title. Now, in this case, I will say that free, outside of quotes, is fair, because in this instance, it is actually free. All it requires is an account, a free, no money asked for account. Although arguably even that's not really free, if you think about it, because you're still being forced to give an email address out. You're still selling your identity. The game Unrailed is going to replace Lawn Mowing Simulator on the Epic Games Store. Like, the old adage, there's no such thing as a free lunch, I think is very accurate. Man, everybody is just really struggling right now with Maxi not working. Everybody remembers it working a different way, and they've just changed the card. You would think that they would have made a bigger deal about that too. Toss that card. Let's go ahead and activate this. Set that. Set that. Should I draw another card? Alright, I think we want to do 4. This one would special summon. I don't want a special summon. We want to do then 3. Which 3 doesn't activate at all. Then we want to do 1. Which this is the one we do want to activate. Just getting rid of one of those. To then attach that. And then activate this. Toss that. Destroy that. And I think we're good. So, how many cards do we have in the graveyard that we could actually use? Not enough. But wouldn't matter, we could activate this and take these 10 cards out. Let's see, August Live's games with gold titles have been revealed. Notice they don't even use the phrase free in that, because it isn't free at all. It includes Calico, Scourgebringer, Saints Row 2, and Monaco What's Yours Is Mine. I don't even know which game this is from, although it looks slightly interesting, but I kind of wish they would do a better job of labeling their screenshots. Calico is this game, apparently, so that brings it down to the screenshot either being Saints Row 2, which is believable but odd because there's no like purple, and the Saints always wear purple, so then that would probably bring it down to Scourgebringer and Monaco, and so I'd have to assume this Monaco What's Yours Is Mine. Go ahead and activate this effect. Get rid of this card and destroy this card, even though destroying that card probably doesn't do anything. Yep, it didn't really do anything. This was an interesting bit of news. If anything, this is the biggest news of the past couple of days. Sony has announced this Backbone One, a unofficial iPad controller, iPhone controller. It is going to cost way too much money at $100 and £100, and yeah, we are now at just parity as far as the pounds, where there was a point where £1 was worth about $2.50. It looks like a decent controller, certainly for the iPhone, but it is odd, to say the least, that Sony would go in this direction, because I don't feel like there's a lot of love lost between Sony and Sony and Apple of days in the past. Remember, Sony MP3 players before the iPod came out were like winning the whole MP3 player market, and Apple just ate their lunch, and Apple has really ate the lunch of Sony as far as electronics over and over again. There should be a Sony equivalent to an iPhone, and the Sony Android phones aren't particularly even that popular. Sony's dropped the ball in their electronics quite a bit. Even if this had motion controls in it, or like some kind of extra touch screen on the back that was being added, $100 is way too expensive on this. Even if you told me that these were like magnetic thumbsticks so they wouldn't have controller drift ever, or special magnetic force feedback things, and you had to put like extra batteries in the back, $100 is still too much. You have a device here that is using a lightning cable connector right as they are about to force iPhones over to USB-C. So this device is almost certainly going to be useless for even iPhone holder owners in the next 2 or 3 years. I definitely would not suggest buying this. Plus, you'll have this like D-pad. I don't like the way this D-pad looks. And if anything, this is probably closer to a Nintendo Switch in the positioning of the thumbsticks. They are much more vertically aligned with the buttons and the D-pad than what you would see on an Xbox controller that are more sunken in. So it's probably not even going to feel like a PlayStation controller in the first place. Yep. Definitely wait until this is a USB-C version, unless this can be swapped out to USB-C. But if it could be swapped out to USB-C, then why not sell this as something that would work on Android phones also? Then you come into the next problem with this, which is, what games are you really playing here? Other than streaming things to an iPhone or an Android phone, or I guess in this case only an iPhone, what games really are you playing that have controller support? Those games are going to be few and far between. On top of which, what is Sony's plan here? Now, if you told me this was actually being released by Sony Electronics or a different division from PlayStation, Sony Interactive Entertainment, or Entertainment Interactive, SEI, maybe then that would start to make some sense if this was interdepartmental fighting, because we kind of know there's a lot of that going on. But no, this is coming directly from Sony PlayStation, as far as I can tell from this article. So it definitely feels like they're rushing out a concept device that they'd been working on. They probably got stopped because of chip shortage and just a pandemic, and now they desperately need to rush it out before the European Union forces Apple to adopt USB-C worldwide. And there definitely will be some Apple fanboys out there that will have to eat some crow when they start to try and make the argument that USB-C is better than the Lightning cable, when they've for years tried to make the argument that the Lightning connector is better than USB-C connector. And even if it is very possibly true, I'd be willing to believe that the Lightning cable, with its design to kind of break the cord instead of break the connector in the phone, which was generally, I think, their idea, while that may have been a better design, there's a point where you have to accept reality, and when you have a proprietary connector that you're not sharing with people and everybody else is using the less proprietary connector that is being shared, you just have to get on board with the less proprietary USB-C connector. You can't let perfect be the enemy of good enough, and in a lot of ways Apple was trying to do that. Alright, let's come over here while I'm thinking about it and edit this deck. We need this gone and this gone, which, give me another one of those, and give me another one of those. We can't craft that many cards. Okay. So then we reduce that. I could craft these cards if I had more. And then is there anything simple we can craft? It's just like super rare, yeah. Craft that. We don't even have to craft that. Change the deck up a little bit and start playing. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Warhammer 40k Darktide has been delayed until November on PC, with the Xbox to be announced. I have the game was supposed to be on Xbox Game Pass on day one, whenever it does get released on Xbox. I've yet to see a good Warhammer 40k game, despite its popularity. It really sucks. There should be a good Warhammer 40k game out there, but yep, suffice it to say, have not seen it. Right, let me activate this. And we don't cancel our own card. Then we add that to our hand. And then go ahead and just set a trap. And then, do we even want to do anything else? Nope, I'm just going to end the turn there. Moving on, What Remains of Edith Finch is now available for Xbox Series X and S and PS5. I would say this game is one of these walking simulators that really has gotten a lot of updates and a lot of supports. I believe this was one of the games that they fairly quickly jumped from Unreal Engine 4 to 5 or 3 to 4 and said there wasn't much of a difference there in upgrading it, which I don't think there really was too much of a difficulty in upgrading games from one Unreal Engine to the other, although I'm not sure there really is that much benefit from upgrading it either. But yeah, for what it was just a very well received walking simulator, it's definitely gotten a lot more publicity and press by just porting itself and making sure that it's up to date, which that really is a lesson that all game developers could learn, is to say, hey, if you just keep updating your game, if you just keep supporting it, you are going to increase the odds of people reporting about it and increase the odds of getting that ever so important article written about it after its 6 months or first couple of weeks of launch windows. Honestly, after the first couple of weeks, the odds of anybody talking about your game ever again as far as video game journalism is extremely, extremely low. Outer Wilds is coming to PS5 and Xbox Series S, plus the developer Mobius reassures that the Switch version is still coming. The cult PlayStation game Hohokum is now available on Steam, which this definitely looks like a kind of colorful, interesting looking game. Alright. Activate special summon there. To toss that and see if he wants to react on that. And he just tried to max see me, and the max C didn't work, so yeah, I may make it to platinum here if I played enough. That would be the big if, certainly, though. Alright, let's now activate this one. 1, 2, 3. I would have to play quite a bit, though. I would have to get probably 10-15 victories. Not directly in a row, but almost in a row. Meanwhile, the PlayStation reports that its Q1 declines as the PS5 shipments reach 21.7 million. Falling software sales hit the PlayStation's division's sales and profits. They just don't have any games. Is a short way to rewrite that headline. Even though they've also struggled with having hardware, they really don't have that many games. And they can't lean so much on Japanese game developers who want to make games for a PlayStation console nobody in Japan really cares to own or does own. And they've already said they don't want adult games, so they've lost that niche. And in losing that niche, they lost, I think, a lot more favor than they thought they would with the Japanese audience. Because almost certainly it is a case that for everybody who played something like Dragon Quest or the Japanese RPGs, 90% of their time, they also felt that they were being treated nicely for that 10% of the time when they wanted to play an adult game or a visual novel. And so once you irritate people, they're likely to leave. In the same way that if you were going to a restaurant and drinks were free refills were happening at the restaurant, and then all of a sudden free refills went away, even if you're still enjoying the food the same amount, you might feel like you're being mistreated. You might decide that that is the point to stop coming as often or stop coming altogether. Like, you can never really go backwards on your offerings. You can only get better, not worse. And as far as consumers go, Japanese consumers in particular, the pro-censorship stance felt like it was a worse thing, not a better thing. Moving on, apparently the delayed Minecraft Smash Bros. Amiibo figures now have a release date. Steve and Alex are coming in September. I am shocked that Nintendo is even bothering to still do Amiibos, but I wouldn't be surprised if these have been in production for 2 years over the pandemic, and they're just... I wouldn't be surprised if they were actually sitting in warehouses for the most part. Amiibos as a concept are dumb, and you would see them fairly quickly abandoned. I imagine NFC will always be a feature in future Nintendo things for backward compatibility, but you'll see very few games, even first-party Nintendo games, doing anything with them. Also, that's very similar to like cell phones. Like cell phones have a lot of features that have been added to them, Android phones. Like, there's a wireless charging feature where you can put one phone on top of the other phone, and for some phones, and people, I think, never really engage with that or do that in the first place. And then NFC and wallet pay, all of these features are being added. This has nothing to do with video games, but I just heard about a HTTP 3 standard that has apparently been adopted just a couple weeks ago that will potentially drastically change how the internet works, and it's going to change things to such a way that that the whole internet might be faster, but also it might get blocked because middleman firewalls and routers may not be able to track or block things they want to track or block, because it's encrypting a lot more of the headers, the TCP headers, into a new encryption standard, and then actually sending the actual data over UDP instead of TCP, which UDP really hasn't been used a lot in the past 2 or 3 decades. But yeah, this could be a major change, and it's a major change that's already being like silently upgraded, and you won't, arguably you may not see any real difference as an end user, but how the internet works may change quite a bit, and it needs to change. It needs better, smarter technologies, because more and more data is just being added to web pages willy-nilly, and we can't just constantly increase the speeds as much as everybody would love to just constantly increase the speeds. Like, alright, I'm gonna toss this one, which is possibly a mistake. That is going to let me destroy 2 cards. this down. Set this one down, I guess. Go into battle mode. Destroy this one. See what happens. This really isn't a great card. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles, Near fans gazumped as Automa's secret area turns out to be an elaborate mod. It was never meant to blow up this big, the modder says. Yeah, that's what I speculated. I don't know what this word gazumped means, though. I've never heard that one at all. Usually, when you have replacement words like this. Let's see, do I even have a define button? Nope. Like, according to the free dictionary, gazump, a commerce to raise the price of something, especially a house, after agreeing on a price verbally with an intending buyer, which I think that is probably illegal in the United States, or commerce to swindle or overcharge. So it's not even the right word. Yeah. So the article, the Video Games Chronicle writer there, decided to try to go use a bigger word, and he didn't even use the right word. Talk about irritating. And that's why there's a certain level at which you should speak and write to when writing anything. Even if you're writing like a doctoral thesis for high-level physics, you should try to write it to the lowest level that is reasonable, so that it is as understandable as possible. And you shouldn't use big words that aren't being used commonly. And you shouldn't try to confuse things. Medical terminology is the number one exploiter of that, and does not follow that rule. Medical and legal, both, I guess. Yeah. Both of them use very big words, old-fashioned words, words that are not in common parlance at all. Even common parlance is too big of a word to use. And it is intentionally done out of elitism and out of a subconscious, if not conscious, attempt to exclude people and confuse people and be elitist. Moving on to the next article, Sony refuses to be drawn on whether it could raise the price of the PS5. It recently raised prices on a range of consumer electronics in light of the global chip shortage. To be drawn on, again, is a terrible phrase. Do they have a new editor or writer? Like, whoever they're paying to write here is doing a very bad job. And it's not like these, because this is a UK site, they're using different vernacular because of that. Like, at a certain point, Sony should say we have no price increases to announce at this time as regarding the PlayStation 5. That's a fine response. You don't really have to get any further in details than that. Going into any bigger conversation is just going to pigeonhole you into saying something that you might decide to change later. Honestly, this should just be a no comment response. Really. Yeah, and the actual response here is About potential price increases for the PS5 at this point in time, there's nothing specific I can share with you about prices. And this was after being asked whether they would consider increasing the price point during a first quarter earnings call, which is just a standard question that you would be asked if you're from shareholders. This might be a case of cyberbullying as far as this Video Games Chronicle article at a certain point. I don't remember this exact story, but apparently a fired Assassin's Creed creative director, which that seems mean to say fired when you could just say former. Ashraf Ismail is now working at Tencent. He is serving as a, quote, consulting creative director at the Timmy Studio Group. He was terminated in August of 2020 following accusations, but I guess never proved, of abuse of power and extramarital affairs, which you should not be fired for having an affair. Like, it really does not seem like a business's business whether or not you have moral failings and are having affairs. As far as abusing of power, isn't that every manager ever? So, yeah, definitely seems like this was a maybe justified, maybe not justified cancel attempt. And if anything, this really goes to show where the whole cancel culture is. And again, I won't say SJW because I'm not gonna even bother to use that phrase in this case. This shows, however, when somebody is trying to cancel you, or when people jump on the bandwagon of trying to cancel you, you can't even go work at Tencent or work at a different company without people putting out what is effectively not news. Like, it's not news to say somebody is working somewhere and bring up old stories and old mudslinging that really should not be brought up. We've seen this with GameDeveloper.com, where they do that fairly constantly, just bringing up old news and just trying to push a cancel attempt. I mean, already the guy's been fired once, so it's not a case that you just want the person fired. It's that you want them fired and to never work in the industry and to potentially starve to death and become homeless and just have their entire life ruined for, in this case, not even accusations that seem that awful. If he committed a crime, he should be in jail and he should be charged criminally. But extramarital affairs, abuse of power, whatever that means, those aren't really big accusations. Almost every boss I've had at some level did some small amount of abuse of power. And that's pretty much true for anybody who's ever had a boss. Boss, like, asking you to come in early when you were scheduled already for a specific amount is an abuse of power. Boss asking you to potentially buy Girl Scout cookies for his kids is an abuse of power. A boss asking you to potentially work for a charity or something that has nothing to do with the business is an abuse of power. Even a boss asking you to go out and have drinks with them is kind of an abuse of power. Which really just goes to show that the phrase abuse of power means nothing. Apparently Bugs Bunny will be nerfed in the upcoming Multiversus update, but the character will always be fun, says the game director. It definitely feels like this is going to become the standard reporting is around Multiversus, is that Taz has already been nerfed, Bugs Bunny is going to be nerfed. That's not the stories you really want to have. You definitely would want to put a different spin on it, or try to get a different spin on it to say character balances will come with every update. And these will be character balances for multiple characters and not just the nerfing of one character. And I'm sure that is in part how they're trying to sell it, and it is just Video Games Chronicles rewriting the headline to use the phrase nerfed. Alright, so now we're at the Gematsu articles. A game called Shinso Club launches September 1st. I think we had already looked at this game. A side-scrolling action roguelike game. Yeah, this was the one that looked a little bit like a Mega Man type game. Platformer, maybe. With also some side-scrolling things. Might be something there of interest. King of Fighters 15 DLC characters. Have some trailers and screenshots if you want to check those out. Although it definitely feels like some of these DLC characters are getting 2 or 3 announcements and articles around them. Star Ocean: The Divine Force Mission Report 2 video is available if you want to check that out. I'm going to try and burn through a lot of these fairly quickly. Fuga Melodies of Steel 2 has a teaser trailer and first details and screenshots, which this game, Fuga, it feels like I've seen this game, and it was like only a year or two ago that Fuga 1 came out, but it also feels like a game that I pretty much forgot about. Do we have enough cards? No. But we do have enough to do this. This one and this one here. Do I seriously not have tin? Maybe I don't. Let's try this then. Drop this into the graveyard, activate this ability. I want to make sure I'm paying attention enough to this game so that I'm actually winning. Now is not the time to accidentally concede. I found out What We Do in the Shadows started a new season, and I've just not been watching TV in that way, but also I guess I didn't need to be watching TV because it turned out when I searched my Roku that I could have just been watching it on Hulu this whole time. Which at a certain level, I guess that does mean I probably can watch almost everything I want to watch on the Roku without having cable, dish, satellite TV. The only thing left would be Bar Rescue, and I can watch old episodes of Bar Rescue over the air for free and eventually catch up that way if I just wait long enough. This guy's taking forever. A quote-unquote anime-style 2D platformer called Kokoro Clove Season 1 launches August 4th for Switch and PC. I mean, I don't think you really call this anime-style as far as what anime looks like today. It doesn't look like very good animation in the first place. Um, and pretty much anything that describes itself as anime style at this point tends not to actually be anime style. Now, if you wanted to tell me this looks somewhat like a 1980s anime cartoon, I would believe that. If you wanted to tell me that, can we do a lot here? I can only attack with this, which means that whole battle mode was a mistake, and I should have done this and then this. Summon that. Let's try this. Since I don't have anything really better to do anyways. Let's see what this does. Yeah, that would have lowered a lot of attack. Yep. So I could have attacked that turn and gotten very close to victory. Let's see. Gamatsu says PlayStation software beta rolling out, adding 1440p game list and more, which we already talked about. Famitsu sales have been updated, with Live A Live taking the #1 spot, which, wow, I am surprised that that's such a big seller, but I had heard that it was kind of cool of a game from one person. Although arguably maybe this may be more a case that Nintendo just doesn't have anything as far as first party titles at the moment to compete, so Nobunaga's Ambition and Monster Hunter taking the top spots kind of makes some sense. Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Mario Kart 8 being really the only things of recent times that start to really make sense as far as competitors. I think if I special summon this and this, and then this one and this one, send these back potentially to the graveyard. Yeah, sending those back to the graveyard lets me activate the functions better. Of course, I'm gonna start to run out of cards here fairly quickly. Add that one card to my hand. Discard that card to the graveyard. Draw a card. And then return that to the hand, I guess. Lower the attack on everybody. And we'll get rid of that card first. That way you can't activate his ability. Let's see, Mario Kart 8 Booster Course Pass Wave 2 launches August 4th. We'd already talked about that. Sword and Fairy Together Forever for PS5 and PS4 has a gameplay overview trailer, which if I had more time, I would probably spend more effort looking at it. Looks like a high action fighting game, which is what I kind of expected from Sword and Fairy. The question is really, is there going to be enough of a game to appeal to a Western audience here, or is it just going to be a Chinese equivalent of a JRPG or a Chinese action MMO type game that doesn't really go anywhere? A game called Bunny Park and Lemon Cake for basically everything except for PC is launching September 30th, which definitely looks like a cutesy game from an unknown developer, Cozy Bee Games. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened remake has been announced for everything, basically. A full remake and a substantial rewrite of the 2006 release title, which is, this one feels like it has to do with Cthulhu, which is an odd twist on a Sherlock Holmes game. Also, it really does just put into question as far as what are they doing with the Sherlock Holmes games, as far as I think Frogwares still owning the I'm not going to activate that because they were trying to do a whole reboot and they were trying to connect the narrative, but if they're going to make a remaster or remake of an older game, how is that going to really connect to the reboot of that? But maybe that's where the major rewrite is going to come into play, is that they are going to actively try to they're going to actively try to integrate potentially the old let's activate that. Sure. And we'll just go ahead and banish that. Wait. Don't think I want to do that. I think instead I want to do this. And see, that didn't activate his ability a second time, which I thought maybe it would, but I'm not surprised it didn't. Activate this ability, toss one of these, charge up this guy. One more for the road. Toss this guy. So unless there's something special about this card that I'm not recognizing, we should be able to wreck his strategy. Not quite win, but get close enough. Let's see, Sword and Fairy Together Forever have physical editions launching in early 2023 in the West. Really want to go up a rank, but oddly don't seem like I am going up ranks. It says it's currently open. We've got a couple days. Let's see. 2 more platinum wins, it says I need. That seems oddly high to even go up 1 rank. The game Dungeon Munchies exits early access for Switch and PC. It's coming to PS4 and PS5 on October 28th alongside physical editions. As far as what Dungeon Munchies is, it seems like it's a platformer around cooking to some extent. Interesting. Almost like a half cooking, half Castlevania game. We've seen attempts to integrate cooking as concepts in the games before, and they've never really quite worked. It's weird that that game would just be pretty much announced, though, and it's weird I don't remember it, is I guess what's weird, since it's apparently been in early access. We already talked about the Xbox Live games with gold. We've already talked about the Backbone 1. Goat Simulator 3 launches on November 17th and apparently has a lot of physical edition extra things you can get if you pre-order it, which I think you'd be fairly stupid to pre-order a game that's selling itself on being a kind of glitchy joke game, even though Goat Simulator did do a good job of being a kind of glitchy joke game. Let's see, we already talked about the Warhammer 40k Darktide delay. Dragon Quest X Offline details the Adventurous Tavern and Monster and Subjugation Corps. If you want to read about that, we're getting articles about Dragon Quest X on a fairly frequent basis. A game called Veneris Tactics launches August 4th, which looks like a probably tactical RPG game of some sort. Yep. Just a bland looking 8-bit tactical placement strategy RPG, the kinds of games that I can never find any interest in, which is probably for the better, because they're also games that tend to take way too long to actually play. Alright. I'm hoping I draw a card that just destroys all of its spells. But failing that, we can activate this and toss this. And we'll go 1, 2. He's trying to do a whole bunch of traps that I think do damage to me. But I don't think it's going to do that much damage. Well, that's gonna be weird. We're in an awkward position now. All of our extra cards are gone. Which I guess means... I need to be very careful here, and I need to bring out the traps. Okay. So I'm gonna summon this. I'm going to activate this. Going to add, I guess, this. And then I'm going to attack. I'm just hoping that this trap doesn't do anything and that he can't draw any cards. And he probably can't. He's probably lost. Gametsu has an article here. Nippon Ichi Software for summer of 2022 has a greeting card. This maybe implies a new game that they're working on. It might be a new Disgaea game, but it might just be a whole new game. I don't know. Yeah. I would think that this is probably a new Disgaea game. Greeting card. And arguably this is, I guess, why the Japanese audience, there are all my extra cards back, which good, because I needed those. And he didn't have any extra cards in the first place to banish and return. Yep, but that really goes to show... Yeah, we'll take a 50-50 chance. Let me draw 2 cards at that point. That really goes to show, though, where the idea of making a greeting card makes a lot of sense, because it gets you more press. The game Thirsty Suitors has been confirmed for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. The demo is now available for PC. And yeah, I definitely suspect we are gonna have this player concede. I don't know why he's not already conceding. Would definitely make a lot of sense for him to just give up the ghost early, because there's no way. Oh, what? Summon this. Nope, what? Select this, this. Summon no more monsters, no. Trying to move as quickly as possible. Yeah, it took him really a long time to decide to surrender there when he should have surrendered quite a while ago. One more win. We should just end in a victory. A game called Hindsight launches August 14th, a narrative exploration game for PC, smartphone, and Switch. Which Looks like it might be something, but it might really not be anything. If you told me it's just a bunch of still silhouettes in this low polygon 3D depiction and then it's some narrative built around that, I would totally believe you. That's what it seems like to me. Let's just set that. Let's see. A 3D action game called Bounty Star, the morose tale of Graveyard Klim has been announced for basically everything. Which, okay. Looks kind of like a mech game set maybe in a more western country desert environment. Is there? Might be something interesting around that. That being said, it also kind of just feels like a standard mech game just being reskinned. Since I don't know what this card does, I'm just gonna counter it and hope that that's a good counter. Let's see. Let's look at some of the games on Steam. We've got here a hex grid based strategy game. I am already a little tired, so I could see myself not putting a lot of energy into making decisions and just putting a lot of things on the follow list. We can say no to that. Space Bandit. I also just remembered I need to only put things on the follow list if they actually have a release date. So before I make that decision, I need to make sure that there actually is something, an actual release date there. Alright, well, I was expecting more to happen. Or to draw a better card, but whatever. If we have to win just by doing 1200 damage multiple times, we'll just win doing 1200 damage multiple times. We have a floating volleyball Pong clone. I guess Pong would be the better term. I don't think that there's quite enough of a game here. I also suspect that this is not something you really want to play single player. Another RPG Maker looking game. Looks like kind of an unpolished, unfinished fighting game. This looks like maybe a strategy game where there might be something to this. So I'll give it a follow. This time checking to make sure it has a price and isn't just saying coming soon. Halt the Heist. Doesn't look like anything. This is just another neon shooter. And here we go. We have an adult game called Momo's Conflict, which is tagged with nudity and sexual content. And honestly looks like it's just an RPG Maker game. This is a character playing a nurse, so being a nurse you can make the assumption that the character is not being depicted as particularly young, although maybe in Japan you could be a nurse and still be in high school or even junior high, but the actual background here is just showing that, and the character doesn't look that interesting. I do need to just toggle the adults only category off at this point. It's not really showing me much. It is, however, there's like not even a mature description here for this game, so I question how much actual adult content. Here's your mature description. Strong language and sexual language. So there's, despite the tags, despite it being an adult-only category, it actually doesn't have any nudity in it. And that's really not an example that breaks the idea that there is considerably fewer Eastern adult games getting released on Steam compared to Western adult games. If anything, that just reinforces that there is this difference, and maybe the difference is reasonable because there's just a lot more Western game developers than Eastern game developers, but I honestly don't believe that's the case when you're saying adult games specifically. I think there's way more Eastern game adult developers, or at least there used to be. Maybe the pandemic has changed that, and maybe that's where this perception is coming from. Or maybe it is just a theory that I'm too committed to subconsciously to be willing to fully abandon. Suffice it to say, this would probably be the 2-week mark since the last time we saw any Eastern anime style adult games, whereas it's only been maybe 1 week since we've seen any Western adult games. Let's see, Dodge Mania doesn't look like anything. Urchins and Ink. I don't think it looks like too much. Swimming around as this like little sea character. You learn how to play and read Japanese while you're playing, apparently. Alright, well, I'll put that on the follow list just to see if people like it. Alright. Put that in attack position. Put that in defense position. Here we have a Godumas, which just looks like a asset flip horror game of no interest. Loop Grow might be something, but it's a coming soon, so I'm not going to put it on the follow list. I need to make sure I'm playing. Alright, well, defense position, activate this. Oh, I shouldn't have put this in defense position. I should have activated that first, because that could be all that was needed. It actually is going to be all that's needed, because we put this in the graveyard. Activate this. And then we put this in the graveyard. Activate this. Then we'll just take this, I guess. Alright, now flip summon this. Activate this. Get rid of 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it too late? Or is that going to work anyways? Alright, well, still shouldn't really be a problem. Special summon that one, that one, that one. me summon then this 3. And then I can just summon this 4. We got there in the long run. Which, yeah, again, I could have won here in this turn. I totally could have won. Just had I not put that in attack mode. This is an interesting playfield. I haven't seen many people play it. And we'll just go ahead and set this like it's a trap and then end the turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Is It You, which seems to be some kind of social deduction game, online PvP. Is this a game that deserves a follow, though? Or a YouTube short? Maybe. It doesn't deserve a follow, but because I'm not going to play an online player versus player game. This looks like it's a match 3 Tetris game that's coming soon. I wish I could filter out the coming soon games, but I haven't figured out a way to do this. This looks like a card game that's coming soon. War Dots doesn't look like anything. I need to come over here and play, otherwise... Oh man, I should have activated that. Well, had I activated that, I could have done a special summon. If he thinks that's gonna win for him, I don't know how. But yeah, let's do this. We'll put an end to his strategy at that point. Yep. War Dots doesn't look like anything. The monster under your skin looks like a low effort visual novel. Carino Origins looks like it might be something, but it's coming soon. There we go, and we ranked up the Platinum Tier 4, and I think really what that points out to is that I really wouldn't, I think, be able to make it to the next tier list. I just don't think playing 4 levels, getting 4 victories here, then trying to get 4 victories here, then trying to get 4 victories here is a lot for the next 2 days just to get the diamond. I'd love to get to diamond, certainly, but it's just asking too much. Then as far as daily quests, let's see. There's really nothing here that you can easily jump your eyes to say that they changed Max C. Yeah. Seems like they just kind of secretly changed it. Maybe they didn't even ever actually intend it to work the way it was working. I think from day one the description was always wrong. Let's get all of these Daily quest done. Yeah, it says 1 day left, so really I'd only have 1 day to potentially try and get 12 victories. And that would be potentially all of 1 day. We need to spectate and we need to play a solo game. So, for that, there was a solo game either in this one or this one that I had to play off screen to make some progress. And I think you can pretty well just jump into even these high-level solo play decks with my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck and still probably win. Here we have a game on Steam that's a visual novel called Tokyo Reconnect. It's coming soon, but it definitely does feel like it is maybe a top-tier visual novel. The animation looks pretty good. There's a lot of different characters. I don't really recognize this publisher as well as I probably should. But it is also coming soon, so we should just wait. Yeah, we have another game called Captain's Pikeman that's coming soon. Which, honestly, if I could just figure out a way to filter out the coming soon part things, this would be a lot quicker. Island of Spirits doesn't look like it's particularly that interesting. And here we have another adult game called Nightly Passions Episode 1. Tagged nudity, hentai, sexual content, and there are definitely screenshots with just straight up pornography being shown. What's odd though is that I don't know if this... It's not really a visual novel, which most of them are. Instead, it is a more card-based RPG experience. Also, the animation style, while colorful, I say this so often, definitely feels like it's a Western animator. It too is being labeled as coming soon, which at a certain point I really wonder if a lot of these adult games don't ever get approved and just don't come out. Or if a lot of games in general just never come out. Like this game Blacktail looks interesting also, labeled coming soon. This is becoming a problem. Here we have something called Salamander Country Public Television, which looks like a joke game. Here we have a game called Project Abstentia, which the first screenshot caught my interest, but then all the other screenshots lost my interest. Let's see. Set this card here. Activate this card to draw a card first. Should have done that first. Okay. This one here. Activate this to discard this. Summon this one. Summon this one. Summon this one. I'm playing solo player mode right now, so I can't run out of time. Which is going to make this way easier. Destroy that card. And since that's going to activate an effect, let's just go ahead and cancel its effect while it's at it. Oh, that didn't work, but whatever. Do we have enough in the graveyard yet? Let's see. Alright. I guess I can't do anything else at that point. We've set ourselves up, though, very nicely for victory in the next turn. Let's see, we have a game here called Earth's Center of Gravity, which seems like it's kind of a different style of art style, but the user interface doesn't feel polished enough. I could live with this art style and say, okay, this is an artist being doing different types of brush strokes, but then the actual user interface just looks too bad, too ugly. And there's very few visual novels I want to play anyways. Mutant Meltdown here. It's an interesting theme, but it's, I don't think, going anywhere. Maybe I'm being a little negative there, but whatever. Okay. I don't understand why I can't special summon things, but I suspect it's because this guy is in the extra deck field. And I need to kill this guy first before I can do anything else. Had I destroyed that guy first, I could have banished the card and won in that turn. Now all I can do is banish this card. And guess I could special summon something like this if I wanted to. Let's not bother to do that though. Let's see. Here we have a game called Stelona, which doesn't look visually polished enough. Ex Natura Nature Corrupted coming soon. Looks like it might be something of interest. Do we have enough cards to activate this a second time? I think we do. Which, honestly, at this point, that leaves you in a very nice position. Just overplaying everything. I should just attack and win. And I think, if anything, this highlights just how top tier of a meta deck the Zodiac Tri-Brigade is as a deck. Because that difficulty level is 5 out of what seems like 5 stars. Yeah, we don't see anything higher than 5 on these challenges. So they are expecting that to be very, very difficult, and maybe with the loner deck it will still be very difficult. Although I guess most of these are labeled 5 out of 5 stars too, so these deck challenges are supposed to be fairly challenging. You need to spectate a deck. Here we have a game that's a tower defense called Over 100,000 Corpses. Nothing of interest there. Actually, we have quite a few Gamatsu articles still left. Outer Wilds coming to PS5 and Xbox Series on September 15th. Path List is coming to Xbox One and Xbox Series and Switch this winter. Burn through all these if we can. McKay is coming to Xbox Series, Xbox One, and Switch this winter. I don't know what this game actually is, and this is not a particularly good screenshot of whatever it is. A game called Solar Ash is coming to Steam on December 6th, Xbox Series and Xbox One this winter. Again, this feels like the first time I've ever even heard about that game. What Remains of Edith Finch, now for the PS5 and Xbox Series, is now available. A co-op creature collection game called Flock has been announced for almost everything except for the Switch. Which, interesting looking characters. Although it feels like it may very well be too much flying around, which might get boring very fast. Hohokum, which was first released for the PS4, PS3, and Vita in 2014, is now available for PC. Which, okay. There definitely are some PS3, PS4 games that would be nice if they came to Steam. Annapurna Interactive and Katamari Damacy creator Kitaya Takahashi announces a new title, which I don't think that inherently means it will be anything like Katamari Damacy. Looking at it, it seems to be a kid and a dog, and that's as much as they're going to really tease. Alright, we got the solo spectating done. Which means we are done with all of the challenges for today, and hopefully tomorrow doesn't give me a very difficult challenge, and I probably won't even bother doing tomorrow's challenge. So let's just quickly burn through the rest of the news. Annapurna Interactive announcing publishing partnerships with Cardboard Computer, Dreamfield, Third Shift, and Yarn Owl. I have not heard of any of these companies, though. Apparently Cardboard Computer made Kentucky Route Zero. Dreamfield made If Found. Third Shift is working on a game called Forever Go. And Yarn Owl is in Austin, Texas, and Atlanta, Georgia, working on their first game. So Annapurna Interactive trying to become a publisher, like so many other game development companies. Dinosaur-themed first-person survival horror The Lost Wild has been announced for PC, which this definitely feels like we are moving into an age of potential dinosaur games, if only any of them actually turn out to be good. Obviously there was some level of resurgence and interest in dinosaurs with the attempt and reboots of um, the Jurassic Park movie series. But I really have to question how long that interest will last. Cygames has acquired Metal Max IP from Kodakawa Games. The project to create the best console game starts now. Cygames, I think, is the makers of Shadowverse collectible card game, most notably in my mind. D3 Publisher releases a teaser trailer for a new title called Samurai Maiden, which, okay, looks very Japanese. Samurai Maiden, she's got a sword, she's got bandages over her arm, she's got a sailor Japanese school outfit. JKHH. The phrase JK, I forget whether that means junior high school kid or high school kid. The HH could mean anything, really. So I wouldn't even bother speculating there. The H sound is maybe sometimes mispronounced to sound a little bit like the Ichi sound or Echi sound in Japanese. So maybe it's going to be an elude game, maybe not, but that's a lot of speculation. Maybe very much like Oni Chambara, where you're fighting monsters and doing a lot of hack and slashing. Moving on, Gamatsu has Monochrome Mobius Rights and Wrongs Forgotten, being delayed to October 20th. RPG Maker Unite details 3D character converter, which I guess is a way to take maybe a 2D image and run it around a wireframe to make it 3D. The input there doesn't look particularly great, and the output looks way worse than the input. But it's a beginning of something, and certainly that might help a lot of 2D animators work towards 3D animating. One sec. Sorry about that. I needed to cough and didn't want to cough in your face. The thing here, though, is if you have like 2D animations and then you're converting the 2D animations into motions, that seems like the wrong mistake. I could understand 2D animators starting with this and then making a wireframe 3D model and then making animations using the 3D model. But I can't understand the idea of making a 2D animation and doing it this way. This is almost certainly going to lead to bad games getting re-released with 3D models and making them even look worse, which we already have seen way too much of that already. Moving on, PS5 shipments till up 21.7 million. Labyrinth of Zangetsu has been rated by the ESRB. Looks like it's a turn-based RPG dungeon crawler. I'm going to have to hurry through all this. Adventure Academia: The Fractured Continent is coming to the West in 2022. And Fullmetal Alchemist Mobile launches August 4th in Japan. Alright. And then we've got a few more games on Steam, and then I don't think we'll even do any follow list cleanup on screen. I'll just do it off screen. Chase Around the World here doesn't look like anything. Ortho Royale doesn't look like anything. Rydo doesn't look like anything. This doesn't look like anything. Neither does that. Neither does that. Man, it gets easy when you can just click X on everything. This looks like a Big Fish game. Hidden object game. with anything, I should probably applaud them for being so conservative as far as how many games they put out. They seem like they could put out a lot more. The Great here does not catch my attention. This is a MOBA. Domine. Nothing of interest there. Nothing of interest there. And nothing of interest there. If anything, what's interesting about this Friday is that we have not really seen a lot of adult games, so we probably will see some more on Monday. And then we already talked about this article, so I don't want to talk about it again. MTV's Music Video Awards creates the Best Metaverse Performance category, which is weird. Sales hitting that, we already talked about. Valve is going to stop devs from including accolades and marketing copy in Steam graphics, like 10 out of 10, things like that. That's probably a great idea. Even Steam Festival Full, they're going to try and clean up their art, I imagine, to make it fit the Steam Deck a lot more. That probably also protects Valve somewhat from copyright claims or trademark claims. But yeah, that'll just improve the storefront slightly. They probably still can put all of this in the text description. They just want to get the pictures to be just pictures, which is a great idea. Plus, at a certain point, this means a ton of games may all of a sudden violate Steam's new policies and get removed, and nobody will bother to update the graphics, so their games will get removed because nobody's actually caring about those games anymore. Apparently Resident Evil Village will get new accessibility features with the fall DLC. They have an article here that might be interesting, how the Red Ring of Death helped fuel the console wall marketing. Valve has announced it's producing Steam Decks faster and changing the reservation windows, which we had already kind of heard that, so they're doing it again. And then price increase vague answers from Sony. Meanwhile, we have a game here on the follow list. We'll just go through it quickly. That needs more time. And then we have a horror puzzle game here that'll give it more time. Actually, we won't. Let's just end here. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like and share and all of that. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.